Under the glow of a swollen moon, the crooked house stood like a forgotten scar on the edge of the old forest. For more than a century, villagers whispered that no living soul should approach it after sunset. They said the house was built by a man who tried to bring the dead back from the other side, and when his ritual failed, the spirits he summoned never left. On a night when the wind moaned through the trees like a dying voice, an old man named 𝗧𝗛𝗙 approached the house. He carried nothing but a wooden lantern and a trembling resolve. 𝗧𝗙𝗙 had lived his life with one terrible regret. His wife, Miriam, had died suddenly in her sleep 50 years earlier, and he had never forgiven himself for not being at her side. The villagers warned him that the house fed on grief, that it called only to those whose hearts were cracked open. But 𝗧𝗙𝗙 had lost all fear. He only wanted one thing: to speak to Miriam one last time, even if it cost him his soul. The door creaked open before he touched it. Inside, the smell of dust and time pressed against his lungs. Shadows curled like living things across the floorboards. The air felt thick, as if the house breathed with him. A faint whisper curled around his ear. Miriam's voice, soft and distant, like it was traveling through layers of death. 𝗧𝗙𝗙, why did you come? His lantern flickered violently. A shape moved at the top of the stairs, pale, drifting, and unmistakably human. 𝗧𝗙𝗙 felt cold fingers brush his cheek. The house seemed to swallow the moonlight outside. He stepped deeper into the darkness, and the door closed behind him. Inside the dim stone room, 𝗧𝗙𝗙 knelt beside the frail body on the wooden bed. The old woman lying there looked peaceful, almost untouched by time. Her silver hair spread like frost across the pillow. But she wasn't breathing. She hadn't breathed for hours. Yet 𝗧𝗙𝗙 spoke to her as if she could still hear him. Miriam, my love, if there is any passage between your world and mine, let my voice reach you. The candle beside the bed trembled, though the air was still. Something unseen shifted in the corners of the room. 𝗧𝗙𝗙 felt a pressure building, like the weight of a storm gathering in silence. He remembered the stories. The house didn't just lure spirits. It amplified grief until the walls themselves listened. The older the sorrow, the stronger the echo. A faint warmth touched his hand. He looked up. Miriam's eyes were still closed, but her fingers had curled around his. The cold room suddenly felt suffocating. 𝗧𝗙𝗙 didn't pull away. He had waited half a lifetime for this moment. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered her name again and again. Then Miriam's lips moved. No air, no breath, just the shape of a word. Why now? 𝗧𝗙𝗙 froze. A shadow passed behind him, tall and wavering, like a figure made of smoke. The flame stretched unnaturally sideways toward the bed. 𝗧𝗙𝗙 realized something terrible. This was not Miriam awakening. It was the house answering. The old fireplace crackled weakly as Elias wrapped himself in a worn blanket. His hands shook, not from the cold, but from what he had witnessed near the bedside. He could swear Miriam had spoken, or something had spoken through her. Outside, the wind scraped against the windows like fingernails. Elias whispered a prayer, but the house didn't like prayers. Suddenly, a pale light swirled in front of the hearth. Wisps of translucent figures drifted out of the darkness, their hollow faces stretching as though trying to remember how to look human. Each one stared silently at Elias. His breath hitched. These were not spirits of peace. These were the remnants of all who came here searching and never left. One ghost floated closer, its mouth opening in a soundless scream. Elias pressed himself against the wall, clutching his blanket like armor. The air grew colder until every breath stung his lungs. Another spirit emerged behind him, drifting closer to his ear. "You called her," it whispered. "Now we are awake." Elias's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to summon any of you. I only wanted to see her." A dozen hollow eyes blinked in unison. "She is not the one who answered." At the old wooden table, Elias pressed his face into his trembling hands. The spirits hovered around him like drifting smoke, whispering fragments of memories that were not his own. "Stay with us," one murmured, its voice soft and distant. "It is warmer here," said another. Elias gripped the edge of the table. "I'm still alive," he whispered. A ghost leaned close, its form flickering like a dying flame. "Then why do you mourn like the dead?" The candle flickered violently. The room seemed to pulse with unseen heartbeats. Elias felt his grief pulling him downward, as though the house itself was feeding on it. He closed his eyes, and for a moment he saw Miriam alive, smiling, calling his name from across a golden field. But the vision shattered into pale mist. The spirits tightened their circle. "You wished for her voice. Now listen to ours," they whispered. A ghost leaned close, its form flickering like a dying flame. "Then why do you mourn like the dead?" The candle flickered violently. The room seemed to pulse with unseen heartbeats. Elias felt his grief pulling him downward, as though the house itself was feeding on it. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he saw Miriam, alive, smiling, calling his name from across a golden field. But the vision shattered into pale mist. The spirits tightened their circle. "You wished for her voice. Now listen to ours," they whispered. Elias felt a cold hand brush his shoulder. Suddenly, he wasn't at the table anymore. He was standing in the memory of someone else's death, hearing someone else's final screams. The spirits were showing him the last moments of every soul trapped within the house. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. Elias lay on the bed, exhausted beyond measure. The ghosts drifted above him, their glowing forms circling like silent vultures, waiting for a final breath. His chest rose and fell rapidly, panic tightening around his ribs. One ghost leaned over him, its face inches from his own. Soft, sorrowful, almost tender. "She waits deeper inside," it whispered. "But the path is not meant for the living." Another ghost responded with a hiss. "He must join us to find her." "No," Elias croaked. "I just want to speak to her, not stay." The spirits murmured back and forth, their voices overlapping like waves. The candle by his bed flickered, stretching their shadows until they crawled across the walls. Suddenly, his body felt unbearably heavy. He couldn't lift his arms, couldn't raise his head. The ghosts pressed closer, their cold presence sinking into his bones. Elias felt himself slipping. His heartbeat slowed. The room darkened at the edges until only the pale shapes remained. For a moment, he thought he saw Miriam near the foot of the bed, smiling sadly, reaching for him. Then she vanished, and the ghosts leaned in all at once. Seated beside the bed, Elias clutched the candle as if its small flame held back the dark. But the spirits no longer feared its light. One by one, they emerged from the walls, drifting silently around him like a gathering storm. "Let go," one whispered. "You have carried grief for too long," said another. Elias shook his head. "I will not die in this place." A cold laugh echoed. "You already have." He blinked, confused, then noticed something horrifying. His own body lay on the bed behind him, still, motionless, empty. Elias staggered backward, his hands trembling. "No, no, I'm still here. I'm still alive." But the ghosts only watched him with hollow pity. "You crossed the threshold the moment you asked for her voice," a spirit said. "This house grants only one thing, a doorway for the living to join the dead." Elias felt the candle slip from his fingers. The flame went out, and the darkness welcomed him. Warm sunlight broke through the small window, startling Elias into sudden awareness. The ghosts were gone. The cold was gone. Everything felt human again. Two young villagers, Daniel and Arya, had entered the room. They had found Elias lying on the floor, cold but breathing, his hand stretched toward the empty bed. "Sir, can you hear us?" Arya asked gently. Elias blinked, as if awakening from a centuries-long nightmare. Where did they go?" His voice cracked with fear. Daniel exchanged a worried look with Arya. "Who, sir?" "The spirits," Elias murmured. "The ones who spoke to me, who showed me her." Arya placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You were alone all night. There's no one else in this house." Elias shook his head violently. No, I saw them. They tried to take me. They showed me my body." But the young villagers only saw an old man lost in grief. Elias looked toward the corner where he had seen the spirits gathering. The air shimmered faintly, just for an instant, but he said nothing. Some truths were too heavy to speak aloud. Elias sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the slant of morning light cutting across the stone floor. Arya and Daniel remained near him, speaking in hushed tones, unsure whether to comfort him or fear the strange things he had said. "You should leave this house," Daniel insisted softly. "People say it preys on sorrow." Elias gave a bitter smile. "It doesn't prey, it waits." Arya frowned. "For what?" "For people like me," he answered. "People who can't let go of the dead." Silence filled the room. Dust drifted gently through the sunlight, but to Elias it looked like the lingering remnants of fading spirits. He rubbed his hands together, feeling warmth return to his skin, a warmth he thought he had lost forever. Arya approached him cautiously. "Did you really see her? Your wife?" Elias closed his eyes. Miriam's face appeared in his mind, not peaceful, not smiling, but sad, as if trapped between wanting to reach him and wanting to warn him. "I saw something," he whispered. "Whether it was truly her, I don't know." Outside, the wind shifted. The house creaked deep in its bones, like it was listening. Elias felt the weight of the night pressing on his heart, and he realized if he stayed here long enough, the house might give him what he wanted, but only at a price he could never repay. The room brightened fully as the sun climbed higher. Daniel and Arya prepared to lead Elias outside, away from the house that had nearly claimed him. But he hesitated at the doorway, staring at the empty bed where Miriam's pale form had appeared only hours earlier. "Sir?" Daniel asked gently. "Are you ready?" Elias didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the far corner of the room, where the shadows seemed just a little too deep. Arya noticed it too. "Is something there?" Elias felt a coldness ripple through him. A familiar whisper, soft, almost loving, brushed against the inside of his mind. "Elias." He swallowed hard. "We need to leave," he said quickly. But before they stepped outside, the candle on the table flickered to life. No flame, no spark, no one had touched it. Arya gasped. Daniel froze. Elias stared at the candle with a hollow, broken expression. The house was not finished with him, and as the whisper faded, he understood the terrible tea. "Spirits do not always take you in the night. Some follow you into the day."